This happened to me about 2 years ago when I was working at Denver General Hospital. I'm telling you guys this because I need to get it off my chest, and maybe someone out there will believe me. My name is Kendra, and I was working as an ICU technician. Nothing fancy, just monitoring patients, checking vitals, making sure the machines were doing their thing. I'd been there for about 8 months when this whole mess started. The thing about working nights is you see stuff during the day shift people don't. Less doctors around, fewer family members visiting. Just you, the nurses, and whatever's beeping in the dark. I remember it was a Tuesday night in March. My neighbor's dog had been barking all day, so I barely got any sleep before my shift. I showed up tired and cranky, but that's pretty normal for night shift workers. Around 2 a.m., I was doing my usual rounds when I noticed something weird with one of the brain-dead patients in room 314. The guy had been declared brain-dead that morning, and his family had agreed to organ donation. Standard procedure. Happens all the time. But here's the thing. I was looking at his monitor, and I swear I saw some brain activity. Not much, just little blips on the EEG. I figured maybe the machine was acting up, so I didn't think much of it. The next week, same thing happened with a different patient. This time it was a young woman, maybe 25. Car accident. Family was devastated, but they wanted to donate her organs to help other people. Really nice family. Reminded me of my own cousins back in Phoenix. I was checking her vitals around midnight when I saw it again. Those little spikes on the brain monitor. I stood there staring at the screen for like 10 minutes, watching these tiny signals that weren't supposed to be there. That's when Marcus, the organ procurement coordinator, walked in. He's this tall guy with glasses who always wore the same blue tie. Kind of gave me the creeps, but he seemed professional enough. "Everything okay in here?" he asked. I pointed to the monitor. "Is it normal to see activity like this? I thought she was brain dead." Marcus looked at the screen for a second, then hit some buttons. The display changed. "Machine glitch," he said. "These old monitors do that sometimes. Nothing to worry about." But I knew what I saw. I started paying more attention after that. Every brain-dead patient that came through, I'd check their monitors extra carefully. And you know what? Almost every single one showed some kind of brain activity that wasn't being reported in their charts. The weird part was how Marcus always seemed to show up whenever I was looking at these monitors, like he had some kind of radar or something. One night in April, I decided to take pictures with my phone. I know we're not supposed to, but I needed proof of what I was seeing. The patient was this older guy from Colorado Springs, and his brain was definitely showing activity. I took 3 photos of the monitor, then looked up to see Marcus standing in the doorway. I nearly jumped out of my skin. "Late night, Kendra," he said, walking closer. "Yeah, just doing my job." He looked at my phone, which I was still holding. "Hope you're not taking pictures. That would be a serious violation of patient privacy." I put my phone away real quick, just checking the time. After that night, things got strange. My car wouldn't start one morning after my shift. The mechanic said someone had messed with the battery cables. Another time, I found a note in my locker that just said, "Mind your own business." I started looking into Marcus's background. Turns out he'd worked at 3 other hospitals before Denver General, and at each one, their organ donation rates had increased dramatically while he was there. That's when I realized what was happening. These patients weren't really brain dead. The tests were being faked or manipulated. Families were being lied to so their loved ones' organs could be harvested. I tried talking to Doctor. Peterson, one of the neurologists, but he just brushed me off. Said I didn't understand the complexity of brain death testing. But I knew something was seriously fucked up. The breaking point came when I recognized one of the brain-dead patients. It was Mrs. Chen from the grocery store where I shopped. Her daughter worked there too, and I'd seen them together lots of times. Sweet old lady who always remembered my name. Mrs. Chen had been admitted after a stroke. The family was told she was brain dead, but when I checked her monitor, there was definite brain activity, more than I'd seen in the other patients. I couldn't let this happen. I called her daughter and told her to demand independent testing, to get a second opinion from a doctor outside the hospital. 2 days later, I got called into the administrator's office. They said I'd been making unauthorized contact with patient families and showing concerning behavior around sensitive cases. I was suspended pending investigation. That same week, my apartment was broken into. Nothing was stolen, but my laptop was gone, and someone had gone through all my papers. The photos I'd taken were deleted from my phone somehow. I realized I was in over my head. This wasn't just Marcus acting alone. There were doctors involved, maybe administrators too. The money from organ transplants is huge, and if you're not too picky about when someone is actually dead, you can harvest a lot more viable organs. I ended up quitting and moving back to Phoenix. Never reported what I saw to the authorities because I was too scared. Plus, who would believe me without evidence? But sometimes I wonder how many people are walking around with organs from patients who weren't really dead. How many families said goodbye to loved ones who might have recovered if given the chance? I still have nightmares about those monitors, those little blips of life that nobody wanted to acknowledge. Makes you think twice about being an organ donor, doesn't it? I heard through a friend that Marcus left Denver General about 6 months after I quit. Probably moved on to another hospital where he could continue his work. The whole thing just makes me sick. That's my story. Make of it what you will. I work as a night nurse at Mercy General Hospital in Cedar Falls, Iowa. Well, I used to work there anyway. After what happened, I put in my 2 weeks' notice last month. My friends think I'm crazy for leaving such a good job, but they weren't there. They didn't see what I saw. Let me start from the beginning. I'd been working day shifts for about 2 years when they asked me to switch to nights. The pay was better, and honestly, I needed the money because my car payment was killing me. Plus, night shift seemed easier. Fewer doctors running around, less chaos. Boy, was I wrong about that. My first week went fine. Nothing weird happened. I mostly worked the second floor, which was cardiac patients and post-surgery recovery. But then they moved me to the third floor for long-term care. That's when I started hearing about room 314. The other nurses would joke about it during shift changes. "Oh great, Mrs. Henderson is asking to switch rooms again." Or, "Mr. Garcia lasted exactly 1 night before demanding a transfer." I thought maybe the room had bad lighting or the air conditioning was broken. You know how patients can be picky about that stuff. Then I started paying attention. Every single patient who got put in room 314 would request to be moved within 24 hours. Every single one. And they all said the same thing. Someone was standing outside their window. The nurses would laugh it off, saying it was the medication making them see things. But the weird part was, these weren't patients on heavy pain meds or anything that would cause hallucinations. Room 314 is on the 3rd floor, facing the back parking lot. There's no fire escape, no balcony, nothing. Just a straight drop down to the asphalt below. So when patients kept insisting they saw someone outside their window, Everyone assumed they were confused or dreaming. I didn't think much about it until I got assigned to that section regularly. 3 weeks into my night shifts, I was checking on Mr. Kowalski in 314 around midnight. He was this tough old guy, a retired construction worker who'd been complaining about back pain. Not the type to make stuff up. "Nurse," he said when I came in, "there's someone outside my window." I walked over and looked out. Nothing but darkness and the employee parking lot 3 floors down. "I don't see anyone, Mr. Kowalski. Maybe it was a reflection?" He shook his head. No, there was definitely someone there. Tall person in scrubs, just standing still and looking in. Been there for about an hour now. I told him I'd check with security, but when I called down, they said their cameras didn't show anything unusual. The next morning, Mr. Kowalski requested a room change. This kept happening. Patient after patient describing the same thing. A tall figure in scrubs standing motionless outside the window between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. Always the same time frame. Always the same description. I started keeping track in my phone, just out of curiosity. About a month in, I was doing my rounds when Mrs. Chen grabbed my arm as I was leaving 314. She was trembling. "The person outside," she whispered. "They waved at me." That gave me chills. Up until then, patients had only mentioned seeing someone standing there. Never any interaction. "What did they look like?" I asked. "Tall, wearing scrubs like you. But I couldn't see their face clearly through the glass. They stood there for almost 2 hours, then just disappeared." I decided to do my own investigation. The next night, I positioned myself near the nurse's station, where I could see down the hallway toward 314. Around 2:15 a.m., I saw Mrs. Chen's call light come on. When I got to her room, she was sitting up in bed, pointing at the window. "They're back," she said. I walked over to the window, my heart beating faster than usual. The parking lot looked normal, but then I noticed something. The motion sensor lights that usually lit up the back lot weren't working. Everything was dark, except for one small area directly below the window, where I could barely make out what looked like disturbed dirt and maybe some kind of marks in the grass. The next day, I went outside during my break to check that area. There were definitely marks in the ground, long scratches in the dirt like something heavy had been dragged or placed there repeatedly. And when I looked up at room 314's window, I could see scratches on the brick wall below the windowsill. That's when I started asking questions. I talked to Dolores, who'd been working there for 15 years. She got quiet when I brought up room 314. "You know," she said finally, "we had a maintenance guy who died in that room about 3 months ago. Harold Finnegan. He'd been the window washer here for 20 years before he got sick. What happened to him? Cancer. Spent his last 2 weeks in 314 before he passed. Weird thing was, even when he was dying, he kept asking about his window washing equipment. Said he had work to finish." I felt sick. "Did anyone ever investigate him? Like, was he ever inappropriate with patients?" Dolores looked around nervously. There were rumors. Some female patients complained about feeling like they were being watched, but nothing was ever proven. Harold always did his job during the day when plenty of staff was around. But here's the thing that really fucked with me. Harold had been dead for 3 months, but the sightings in room 314 had only started about 6 weeks ago. Someone else was continuing whatever Harold had been doing. I checked the employee records. Harold's access card had been deactivated after his death, but building maintenance still had his equipment stored in the basement. When I convinced a security guard to check with me, we found that his extension ladder was missing. The really disturbing part came when I started noticing other things. Patients in 314 weren't just seeing someone outside. Some mentioned that their personal belongings had been moved slightly. A water glass repositioned. A book closed when they remembered leaving it open. Small things that could be explained away as forgetfulness, but the pattern was consistent. Someone was getting into that room. Someone was watching patients at their most vulnerable moments, and then somehow gaining access to their space afterward. I quit 2 weeks later. Never found out who was doing it or how they were getting in. The hospital administration brushed off my concerns, said there was no evidence of any security breaches. But I still think about those patients, especially Mrs. Chen, who told me on her last night that she woke up to find her blanket tucked in tighter around her feet. She'd been sleeping alone in a locked room on the 3rd floor of a hospital. I drive past Mercy General sometimes on my way to my new job across town. The motion sensors in the back parking lot still don't work, and every time I look up at room 314, I wonder if someone's still watching.